In the meantime, please enjoy your regularly scheduled ASMR of me rummaging. Okey-dokey. Okay. That's my ducks in a row. For now. I know I've only got one person right here, but I'm gonna go ahead and explain what I'm doing. Tune in, tune out, whatever. This is good practice for me to get used to explaining in English. Let me turn the music down a bit. So this is a still life, a little bit different than what I usually do. Still lifes are kind of outside my comfort zone, but I really like the colors in this one. I think the trick with this is going to be trying to get the feeling, the sense of the scene without getting lost in all of the detail. This is a problem that I know I have, I really struggle with, is not trying to paint every single little piece of detail that's there. And there's a lot of detail here, lots of little fine lines. And I don't need to paint all that detail because only some of that detail is actually relevant to the scene. I do this with my portraits too, but I'm like just a little bit more used to doing it with a face. Hang on, speaking of faces, let me adjust my camera. So I'm a little bit more used to figuring out like what are the relevant details on a face versus what are the relevant details in a still life. So I'm gonna kind of try and narrate how I'm deciding what's relevant and what's irrelevant. And my first step, as usual, is going to be to use Frisket, my art masking fluid, my bad smelling rubber, to mask off any areas that I want to stay white. And while I do this, like anything else I'm doing, I'm thinking about those relevant details. I can't get this cap off. This is childproof and idiot-proof, unfortunately. There we go. Thinking about those relevant details, because I don't, even when masking areas, because I'm making white marks, basically, I still don't want to be painting irrelevant details. If that makes sense. This is the really exciting part of the stream, where I, like, dig around inside the cap and try to get this lump of rubber boogers out, so please enjoy. Every single time I do this, I think, oh, I should just keep tweezers in my box of things. And every single time I don't put tweezers in my box of things. Pomona! Hi! Oh my god, welcome. I'm so glad you came just in time to watch me digging through this rubber mess. Very good timing. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I'm glad you were able to. Oh no! Oh no, in bed with COVID is the worst thing to be in bed with. I'm so sorry. I hope you're not feeling too bad. You got like a fever? You hydrating? That sucks. I hope you're like on the recovery side. Oh, but you also have a cute boy. Not the worst thing to have in bed. So it sounds like you're balancing things. That's very good. Ugh. Okay, just gonna dig out this last piece of rubber booger and then we good. If I don't clean this stuff out, then it doesn't seal when I put the cap back on. And I've learned the hard way that if I don't dig it out, like, at the beginning, I don't do it at all. Welcome, Jaco the Shadows. Thank you. Sorry. Welcome. Got distracted by my pile of rubber. As always, if anyone here is somebody that I know, please feel free to introduce yourself by your IRL name. Otherwise, I'll just assume that you're some kind, mysterious stranger on the internet. Okay. We're doing it. So, to put on the frisket, I start off with this rubber brush that I have lost. Oh, this is great. Oh no. It's definitely somewhere in here. Yikes. I may have to go on an adventure. Hang on. Literally never in my life am I going to start a stream both on time and with everything that I actually need. BRB. Oh, hi! Matt! Yes, which Matt? You'll have to specify. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Yes. Welcome, whichever Matt you are. And, Kookie 1995, welcome as well. We're just getting started. I have finally found my rubber brush. If you haven't seen this before, this thing is a game changer. I used to paint frisket with, like a hair brush. You know, like, you know, this kind of brush. It's got hair on it. But the thing is, frisket totally ruins brushes. So you have to use a really crappy brush, so you get really crappy quality of line. It's bad all around. Thank you, Cookie. So, this thing is a game changer. It's got this flexible rubber tip, so I can pick up the masking fluid with the rubber end, and then get great line quality when I paint with it. So, I'm gonna start masking off areas that I want to stay white. So, it's gonna be a lot of little details here. Let's start over on this side. And it's gonna be kind of hard to see the masking fluid. It's a very pale yellow. It's hard for me to see it, so it's gonna be even harder for you guys to see it. I think you're just gonna have to trust me that it's there. For anyone who was here when I started, as I was introducing this, I'll explain it again. This is a still life, so I'm thinking about reducing some of the detail here and trying to reduce it just to its essential parts. This is not going well. Because there's a lot of detail in this picture and very little of it is actually relevant to the image I'm trying to paint. How was my day today? Oh, great question, Kookie. Actually pretty good. I just, I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of conversationexchange.com, but it's a really, really great way to like, connect with people who are learning other languages. So if you're learning a language, you can find people like, I'm trying to learn Mandarin Chinese right now, and so I can find native speakers who want to work on their English, and we can connect over Skype or WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever. And so I have made a couple new friends lately, very, very patient friends. And I had my first actual Zoom call with one of them this morning, and that was really nice. So that's mostly what I did today. It was pretty good, slightly stressful. Meeting new people is always horrifying. How about you? Anyone else? Kooky, how was your day? Nice. Is that your day was cool? I hope your day was cool. What time zone is everyone in? It's 2 p.m. for me, so it's mid-afternoon. Wow. 2 a.m. Dang. That's all the way on the other side of the world from me, I think. Am I remembering correctly, from some time ago, my memory for names is not great, but did you say, Cookie, that you were in, India? Sweet. Nice. You say it's hot over there? It is decidedly not hot here, for which I'm very grateful for. Our warmer weather is starting to roll in, but anything above 65 degrees Fahrenheit and I'm uncomfortable, so I prefer it cold. I'm using the frisket to mask off a lot of little areas of backlight. If you look closely at the photograph, you'll see that there's like a very fine white line right along the edge of some of these forms, and that's limbing. That's Limning. That is the backlight that's just hitting the edge of that curve. And so limbing is often one of those really important details that I want to capture. But if I nail it right, it's really going to help describe the form with minimal detail. That's the theory anyway. It doesn't always work out like that. So that's why I'm trying carefully to get this white portion accurate. Yeah, I do have an Instagram, Cookie. I have it linked on my page. Or at least I should. I figured out the info panels pretty recently, so who knows. Dope. If you have like an art Instagram or something you want to share, you're totally welcome to pop it in chat. I always like seeing what other people are working on. Comic-Con in Mumbai. Cool. How was Comic-Con? Was that recent? I think I'm almost done with the frisket step here. Just trying to capture all those little pieces that I want to have them stay white. Yeah, I know. Okay. Oops. Nice, pencil drawings. I miss doing a lot of sketching. I used to sketch like all the time. And now I spend a lot of time painting, which is great fun and I love it, but sometimes I kind of miss just like doing big, detailed pencil sketch drawings. Get this out of the way. So whenever I make a mistake with the frisket, I can just wait for it to dry. Oops. And then basically just like peel it off and try again. Thank you for saying. I totally get what you mean with having to like balance art with other studies. I studied biology in school, I went into the sciences, I went into tech, I spent 7 years as a software engineer because like you can't, it's hard to make money as an artist. And so I had to give up art for a long time before I was able to get back into it. And now here I am doing it in public on Twitch. Damn, that really doesn't want to go, does it? Okay, well, other than this problem area here, I think mostly pretty good. To see where the frisket is, sometimes I kind of have to like tilt the paper a little bit to see where the shine is. I don't know if that was supposed to be there. Thank you, I appreciate the, well, always believe in myself. Same to you, always believe in yourself. Okay. I think that's all of the bright highlights. No, got a couple more. Be getting to the watercolor portion of this very soon, I promise. I just need to fuss with this edge some more. It's causing me problems. There we go. Often I don't really find out what the frisket looks like until I've already painted on top of it, and then at that point it's too late. So we're all going on an adventure today. Oh yeah, Cookie says, I always question whether myself how the older day people were doing art with less resources. Honestly, it's a great question. I often think about, you know, all the people who had to grind their own pigments and whatnot. I'm so grateful I just squeeze it out of the tube. And I think that's part of why their art became masterpieces, is because of all the work they put into it and all the techniques that they invented, basically. You know, I mean, this is Isaac Newton or someone who was like, if I have seen farther, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. Same deal with art. You know, I know techniques that someone developed by very hard trial and error in, like, you know, the 16th century. Alrighty, let's put some actual paint on this. So the first thing I'm gonna do, let's think really carefully. With watercolor, you generally always go light to dark. And I'm looking at the table. I don't really care about, like, this background around here. I'm not going to be too precise about that. So I'm looking at this table, and I'm trying to imagine it as a shape without anything on it. And I see that there's a gradient that's kind of like bluish, almost purplish up in this corner right here. And it's much warmer and a little bit yellowish right here, and it even gets kind of like brown warm here. I'm trying not to look at the shadows right now. I'm going to paint the shadows on top. So I'm trying to ignore those and just understand what the underlying gradient is going to look like. And I think I'm going to paint pretty much all of it, that sort of light gradient, and then I'll be able to build on top of that. So let's make that paint. Because this is, oops. Because this is a landscape painting, it kind of takes up a different space in the camera window than my, like, horizontal or vertical portraits. So I'm just gonna kind of shift stuff around so that you can see it. As you can see here, I don't clean my palette ever, really. Mostly because I end up reusing a lot of this paint. So I'm gonna take a little bit of water on a shop towel, and I'm gonna make my warm shade right in this well, and I'm gonna make my cool shade right next door. You know, I actually don't think I have seen art made by the blind. That would be really cool. I'd like to see, or like maybe feel what that is like. I imagine maybe techniques are different, and like a focus on different experience rather than like just a visual. That'd be pretty cool. I'll look that up. Okay, so we're gonna put some water. I want, for this wash, because I'm going to cover a certain amount of paper, I want, this is a useful quantitative measure. I want enough water. I want to mix enough paint, so I don't run out halfway through and have to mix more of a slightly different shade. Mostly, though, while things are wet, watercolor is very forgiving. You can just kind of plop in colors here and there. Okay. So my warm shade is, it's kind of a really cool yellow, actually. So I'll pull some of this yellow in here. I'm going to tone it down so it's a little bit earthier with some of this. This is also going to warm it up, though, so I want to counteract that. And this is kind of going to tone it like kind of grayish, neutral. A little bit more dark. It's gonna look like the wrong color at first. This is just the process of color mixing. It's kind of got a greenish shade. Let's push this with a little bit of... Okay, that's a pretty good base for me to start with. I'll show you what that looks like. It's still a little cool. I really have to like cross my eyes to look at this. So if you see me crossing my eyes while I look at the camera, that's what's going on. Okay, this is really, really light. It's some greenish and then a little bit of purplish. I think I got the right colors. So I'll move this back into camera view. I'm going to start off with like pretty much light color. Try to keep this line pretty crisp here. Actually, I can do this whole shade here. Anything that I'm going to paint dark over eventually, I can put color down on right now. So any area that's eventually going to be dark, I can paint over. It's the beauty of watercolor. And I want this whole area to stay wet until I'm done working on it. Otherwise, weird shit happens. Pull that into here. Oops. Okay, so let's start pulling in this. Bit of kind of a teal shade, and I want to bump this to be a little bit more blue. Everything that we have here is going to be it's going to be much lighter when it dries, so it might look really weird at first, or it might look too dark. This is very, very light. This will be nearly invisible. Let's mix a little bit of this in and see if it was the right color. Maybe, maybe not. I want to be sure to really get the warm yellows in this area. So this is, as I said, it's gonna look like a mess for a minute. If you've been to one of my streams before, you know that it has to look terrible before it gets better. So just gird your expectations and come along for the ride. Honestly, learning watercolor, to paint watercolor, has been so good for me. Just in the sense of learning how to manage my own expectations and like wait patiently for things to turn out before I make a judgment on them. Which I think is a very important skill to have, no matter what kind of art you're doing, or anything in life, what kind of life you're living. Hey, Cartridge Blower, welcome. What is this? Great question. This is watercolor. I don't know if you were here for the explanation of watercolor. It looks like crap until it stops looking like crap. So you're here for the it looks like crap stage. Please stick around. I'm putting down a base layer right now. I'm trying to get the warms and the cools right on this table. Hopefully, right now, so the paper starts to buckle a little bit, and I don't quite want to let these lines develop here. So I'm going to keep pushing the paint around just a little bit until it starts to settle into the paper. I also want to make sure that all of the color I'm putting down is a bit more intense than what I really want it to be, because it's going to dry lighter. Yeah, Matt, the messy, I think that, like, this is hard for me. I'm a messy person, but when it comes to, like, making things, it's very hard for me to create mess intentionally, or just, like, let things develop as they will. And so, but that's a critical part of creating those interesting backgrounds. They look overdone, they look fussy. If you mess with them too much, you sometimes just have to sit back and, like, let what happens happen. Not my best skill, I'll tell you that. So I'm gonna give myself, here, I need to put some more paint down. I'm running out of quinacridone rust. I need to give myself a bit of a time limit. Like, I will stop fussing with this in 2 minutes. We'll see. Keep me honest. It's not as obvious in the picture, but this is one of those things where you kind of like, once you get used to painting and seeing things, you sort of notice like, oh, the photograph isn't going to show this level of color in this area, so I'm going to have to make it up. Aya! Oh man, glad you could make it! Welcome. We're putting down our first layer here. Very messy, but that's how it is. And then in a bit, we're gonna have to just kind of wait for it to dry. I may go get the hair dryer so that we can speed that up a bit. I did say that there was some purple in here, and I'm gonna make that happen now. Theoretically. It's like basically a whole rainbow of colors on what's basically a single color wood top. I love that. This is my favorite thing about painting, I think, is that it makes me actually look at colors and see that, like, there are so many colors that we don't expect to see all over the place. Lifting a little bit of pigment in a couple areas, just because there's kind of some puddling going on. I'm taking a little bit of a hyper-realistic approach here, where when I see a color, I just kind of bump it up a little bit. Okay, so I am getting very close. This side of the painting is already starting to dry a little bit, so that means it's time for me to stop fussing with it. But I want to get a little bit more of this nice warm red down. And sometimes what I do, you won't be able to see this on the main camera, but when I have sort of water pigments that are blending together, but they're not blending together fast enough, sometimes what I'll do is just blow on it. This doesn't dry it at all, it just pushes the pigments around a little bit. All right. Yeah, so this is our hot mess of the day. We're gonna let this dry. I'm gonna go grab my hair dryer so that we can dry it a little bit faster. You don't have to wait too long. So please enjoy this hot mess that I have cooked up for you. BRB. Dryer time. One more thing that I'm kind of thinking I might want to do is put some salt down. If you've seen my art, you know that I like to use salt. So I don't want to overuse it. I can't do it over here because it's too late. This is already dried, but I could add some really subtle texture right here at the edge. And when I add salt to an area that has dark pigment on it, it tends to be very dramatic. Let me see if I can find an example of that. No, I put all my paintings away. I don't know where they are. It tends to be very dramatic because the salt, as it crystallizes, it actually, it pushes the, I'm not sure if it pushes the pigment away or if it pushes the water and the pigment away exactly, but it creates like light spots. It creates these blossoms of texture. When it's very light pigment that I put it down on top of, it's not as noticeable. So you'll just see some kind of vague texture rather than anything like super intense. I'm also using like smaller salt crystals. I'm rubbing my fingers a little bit as I put the salt down, and so that means it's going to be smaller crystals or smaller salt blooms as opposed to bigger ones. All right, I promise hairdryer, we're doing it. Watch me blow out all of the power in my house by plugging in too many things to an extension cord. Please join me for today's stream, which is things not to do with your home electricity. I'm using a low setting here because the salt kind of needs a little bit of time. But you can see that there's these kind of dotted flowery shapes. I actually don't know if you can see on camera, but they start to develop. I'm catching up with chat in the meantime. I'm not going to be painting over this area, which is the only wet area still, for a little bit. But this isn't quite dry. I can tell because when I touch it, it's kind of cold. It's cold because it's evaporating. So I need to put this again. Good enough. Sorry for the noise. I should probably figure out how to temporarily mute my stream. Yeah, Matt, what you say about getting picky about the art and how practicing is tough because it never looks as good as it does in your mind, that is so real. And let me tell you, like, pretty much as, like, I think no matter how long you have been making art for, like, that's gonna be true. I've made a lot of art, and I will still kind of get an idea in my mind, and it doesn't turn out like I expect it to. So, persevere! You can do it! Okay. Next layer is... what is the next layer? I'm cleaning up my edges a little bit here. I'm going to want to get this salt off of here before I try to paint this area. So I'm going to focus over here. I think what I might do... So everything here is kind of a connected shape. So I'm going to have to plan strategically about what layers I paint when. This is an isolated area. So that's great for me. I think I'm going to dig in here. And so I'm going to put down a orange-red gradient over this whole area. And have the red concentrate here and have it be kind of more amber coming out. And I'm not sure if I'm going to try to put that texture down into the shadow now or probably in the next layer. Usually when I'm deciding, do I want to add another shape or a texture at the same time? Like if I'm deciding to put down a gradient, when I'm thinking, do I want to do something else at the same time? Often the way I answer this question is like, is the second thing that I'm trying to do, is it fuzzy or is it sharp? If it's fuzzy, then I want to do it at the same time because that's where I get those cool kind of diffused gradient effects. But if I want sharp edges, I can't add another layer on top while it's wet. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna mix up some of that amber color. And I'm using quinacridone rust here. I don't think you can quite see this. But I'm mixing up some quinacridone rust, and I'm warming that up with gamboge yellow. And maybe some quinacridone gold? We'll see. Yeah, definitely. So. You see how this base layer is like actually pretty light now? Actually, I'm not totally sure how I'm going to do the texture on this shadow. It's really cool reflected, like the water is diffracting through the glass. I'm not really entirely sure how I'm going to do that. So, welcome to the adventure. I hope I'm not disappointing anyone by admitting that I frequently have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. Oops. See? Just like that. Oops. It's fine. I should be using a flat-edged brush for this to control that edge, but I'm lazy, so I'm just using my big, fat, round squirrel brush for everything. One of my painting teachers gave me the really, really useful instruction to just use bigger brushes, because I used to use tiny brushes all the time because I liked the detail, and I liked putting in lots and lots of detail, and I do not need to put as much fucking detail in as I like to. So having to use a bigger brush has really helped me to loosen up a little bit. Would probably be the word. This is a cadmium red I'm dabbing in. Really rich red. Gonna see how this develops. There's a blue-green shadow on top of it. This edge should not be so dark. Yeah, actually, if you guys want to see more of the like paint mixing, I can actually just I kind of optimized so that you could see the painting, but if, like, I don't know, show of hands on chat or something, if you want to see more paint mixing and, like, less of the painting, I can just zoom out a little bit. So just let me know if anyone has, like, a strong preference in that direction. Yeah, okay. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Aya is the one who's got an opinion. Okay, hang on a second. Yeah, midstream camera adjustment. What could go wrong? Alright, I'll try to get my whatever palette I'm working on in the scene. And just let me know if you guys want anything else adjusted. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Eden, hey, welcome! Thanks for joining us. I'm in the middle of a midstream camera readjustment because we want to see a little bit more of the paint mixing. Okay, how's that feel? If at any point you want to see like more of the detail, I can zoom in again. Otherwise, we'll just stick with this. So as you can see, a lot of this color kind of started to settle into the dip, and I'm actually going to take advantage of this half-dry state. And I'm going to use a piece of paper that I totally don't have. Cool. There we go. Just a dry piece of paper towel. I'm going to dab on this just a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. It leaves a little bit of a crinkly texture. Not that much. I think I need to find a piece of the wax paper I was using. But unfortunately, I don't know where that is. So before this area dries, I'm going to add a little bit more red. And I also want to work some quinacridone rust in here as well. There's going to be another layer on top of this, but I always like to get as much color as I can in each layer. I've generally found that the fewer layers, up to a certain point, the fewer layers a painting has, the more I like it, so. Here's that rust up here. Something else I'm going to do as this starts to dry is I'm going to lift up some of the color because we have some highlights on there. The rim of this cup is also a little bit darker at the tip, and I want to get that in now rather than later. Leave that one. So taking a damp, stiff bristled brush right here, and I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of that color. Because the paint, the paper is still wet, it's gonna come back in there. Pigment goes wherever there's water. You can't stop it, really. But I can discourage it, or keep taking it away. There we go. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this layer of this piece. Take that off. And I'm gonna move over to this other area, and this is dry now, so I'm going to dump the salt. If I leave that salt in, weird stuff is gonna happen. It's gonna get into my paint. I've learned that I have to dump the salt into a box. If I just put it on the floor of my living room, it upsets both myself and my housemate. I'm learning my lesson. And the salt just brushes off after this. Sometimes there'll be like a little bit that's kind of embedded in the paper, and I'll have to brush at it. Cool. So, back to strategy. Over here, as I said, this is kind of all one big piece. And I'm gonna want to paint the underlying shadow from here down first. I think. But skipping that piece. So I'm gonna mix a blue, the teal blue. It's gonna be pretty light. And then I'll add just a little bit of pigment into this area and this area, because I want to keep this bit right here and this bit light. This is a cool effect that you see in shadows, when shadows double over each other. You can see that the kind of the main form of the shadow that's coming this way, right, this big shadow here, right, that's one shadow, but then you also have shadows coming this way and this way because there's bi-directional light in this photograph. So if I were to just paint one shadow, I would miss out all of the light that's coming from this direction and creating these shadows. So it's kind of cool to see how shadows intersect sometimes. Hey, Wallace Lovecraft, welcome. Why does it upset my housemate? Well, no one likes walking on salty crumbs on the living room, it turns out. So, I don't like walking on salty crumbs on the living room, so no one likes it. I don't know, if you like walking on salty crumbs, feel free to let me know. I will count that as a piece of evidence to the contrary. Alrighty, so we're gonna do some paint mixing. I'm gonna use this well right here because it's already got some color in it that I don't mind having around. This is not a super professional way to do this, by the way. Okay. And we are gonna, let me just shift this like that. We're gonna add some water. And if you're interested in color, I'll just go ahead and tell you what paint colors I'm using. This palette has a lot of paint out on it already, and I'm just, unless I run out of something here, I'll just pull from this palette. I'm gonna pull in some ultramarine blue. This is a really, really intense kind of sky. I don't know how to describe it other than blue. It's a very primary blue. Ultramarine, I don't know if it's still true, but ultramarine used to be made out of lapis lazuli. Very coveted pigment in the Middle Ages. Okay, so we have some blue. I want to add some teal in there, so I'm going to be using some phthalocyanin. That's PTHALOCYANIN. Ooh, should go back to the spelling bee. Phthalocyanin blue, which looks more green. It's this shade right here. It looks like it's almost like teal green, but it's actually one of the purest blues for mixing. So whenever I want to mix blue with something else, I usually start with phthalocyanin blue. If I want to get a pure color. If I want to get a muddy color or something that's a little bit more earthy, then I'll use this blue. Maybe we'll get the opportunity to do that later. Matt says, new dating profile live. I like rainy days, warm tea, and long walks on salty crumbs. Yes, new dating profile line. That's good. You just gotta find the right person who wants to walk on salty crumbs with you. So when I'm mixing paint, it always looks more intense in the well. So I'm gonna take my little bit of testing and just see what it looks like. This is pretty intensely blue. I want this to be a little bit chiller. I'm gonna add some more teal. And I'm gonna add some of what's already here. This is Payne's Gray. It is probably the color that I use most and I think is most versatile. And this will do a nice job of chilling out and darkening pretty much any color. Okay, so more like that. This is still a little bit more intense than I want it to be. I'm gonna water it down a little bit, and then I will drop this into areas. I have a creeper has arrived. The housemate that doesn't appreciate walking on salty crumbs. Well, I was explaining that when I've learned I can't just like knock the salt off of my paintings when I'm done with it. I have to take it outside or knock it into a box because you must walk on salty crumbs. Unless you secretly like it and you haven't been telling me. I don't know.
I definitely don't.
Yep.
Oh, that would have made... I was like, what am I stepping on with my dance shoes?
She didn't know! Uh-oh!
You just outed
I just outed myself as being the one who put the salty crumbs on the floor. Anyway. If you never hear from me again... It's her fault. Alright, we're putting this down. So I'm going to paint out this whole area, and I don't mind going over this because I'm just gonna make this area darker anyway. There we go. I am gonna be a little bit careful about how... No, I'm not, just kidding. I'm using this diluted version, so I get my brush wet and I just kind of dab it in here. And I'm spreading this color out quite a bit. So it's going to be pretty light. This is my favorite part, this line right here. I love how the shadow is in the corner, so I'm actually going to do this with a more precise brush. I've learned my lesson that I can't use the same brush for everything and be happy with my life choices. Okay, breathe out. There we go. That's one edge. This line will lose its appeal if it's not right. So I gotta get it right, you know? Back to my other brush. And now before this area starts to dry, I gotta work pretty quickly. Oh, I probably should have done this, the red underneath this first. Oopsie. Before this area starts to dry, I'm gonna mist it a little bit to give myself some more time. I need to get all my other colors down. So, this area should be pretty light. This area also pretty light. However, I'm gonna come in with some Payne's Gray mixed with some of this phthalocyan blue. I don't want it to be too intense, but I want it to have that blue cast. I'm just gonna put this into the edge here. Once I've got the shape down for the watercolor, I don't have to be as precise with my brushwork. Awesome. Aya, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great time doing what you're doing. I'll see you next time. Once I have that like basic shape, like the wet shape down, I don't have to be so precise with my brushwork. I can just kind of drip color into it. And you can see it starts to diffuse out. Oops. I don't really have the right brush for this, I'm discovering. So this shadow is actually pretty dark all along this edge. Our beloved friend, who's also a neighbor, went out of town, and when she goes out of town, she gives me her groceries left over in her fridge, and when I go out of town, I leave her my groceries, so that neither of us end up wasting too much food. She went out of town recently and left me some delicious OJ. That's what that conversation was about. Just to clarify. I'm gonna dab a little bit right here because this area is just a little bit lighter, as is this area. I like to be pretty careful with dabbing. It can kind of lead to weird textures if you're not careful. Ooh, that's a close call. Okay. is pretty much approaching what I was hoping to accomplish with this piece. Oops, that was already dry. That's cool. This isn't quite dark enough. I'm adding a little bit of indigo here. Oh, and there's actually a bit of purple in the shadow as well. So I'm gonna try to get that in there too. I have to work quickly because I can only add paint as long as this whole working area is sufficiently wet. Once it starts to dry, weird shit happens. Okay, so to mix in some of that purple, I'm going to take some of my quinacridone red. Ooh, I'm going to flick paint on there first. Just drip drop that in. Quinacridone red has this cool effect. I'm not totally sure why it is. Might be the polarity, might be the size of the pigment, but when you mix it in to like something like Payne's Gray, it kind of pushes the existing pigment around a little bit. It has this kind of almost repulsive effect. So sometimes it creates weird effects. We'll just see how that goes. Ooh, I'm getting a burn. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so this is what happens when you add more water to a damp area, is it lifts some of the pigment that's already there. I'm gonna have to leave that there and fix it later once it dries. It starts to lift the pigment that's already there and kind of push it out. And so you get these, but they're cool effects. They're called burns, just like what was happening there. But they are not always desirable. And in this case, it was not. So this is a sign I have to stop fussing. It's gotten too dry. Okay, I'm gonna move on to another area. Leave this alone. I'm gonna fix that area of shadow in another layer once this is dried off. Next up. Good question. What is next up? I don't want to work on this yet, or this. Both of these are either on wet area or they're adjacent to wet. I can't touch them yet. But I could work on this. However, this is a deep color, and when I try to paint this area right next to it, which I'm going to eventually go in with some teal, it could cause some of the dark pigment here to run. So I'm actually not going to do this quite yet. I think I will do this teal then. Great. Okay, thank you everyone for helping me decide. Gotta use the bigger brush for this. The beautiful inside of this teapot. Lovely celadon color. And the celadon is concentrated at the edges. I'm putting this teal down, but celadon is a little bit more green. So I'll mix up. Checking out on this drying area and deciding that that needs to be a little bit different. There we go. So to tone my teal, phthalocyanin blue down into green, I'm going to add a little bit of this Hansa yellow. And that's not a celadon green, but when I add it in, I'm going to fuss it around a little bit. It'll give the illusion of that shade of green. There's a lot of really interesting edges in this scene. I'm looking forward to getting unreasonably fussy over later. Okay, so I'll let that sit. In fact, I'm going to lighten this edge just a bit. Okay. The shadow is doing interesting things. I don't like this hard line, and so I'm going to fuss it out just a little bit. We'll see. Okay. How about this guy back here? Let's do this guy. This guy's kind of isolated from the rest of the painting, and so I don't need to strategize as much. Or at least, I hope not. The item in the back is a tea strainer, and it is a silver object, which means, what color is it? Nothing. It's no color, it's whatever it's reflecting. So, it's a trick question. Ha! So the really fun part about painting silver objects is you're just painting whatever colors are in the area. So that means I'm looking at what I've painted the surrounding objects. Silver objects also tend to look very strange until they're approaching done and you've started to put in the final details. As with most things with watercolor, let's be real. This is dry now, so I can go back in and I can try putting the really dark colors that I want to put into this teapot in the back. But there's one thing, which is that there's this reflected bit right here really want to have this nice bright teal underneath. So I'm going to give it an underlayer of teal. If you paint or you study painting, you may recognize the term underpainting. It's used in different contexts in a lot of for a lot of different types of painting. With like oil or acrylic, underpainting is like the first layer you put down, and the colors you put there kind of inform and influence whatever colors you put on top. And it's a little bit similar with watercolor, but because watercolor is translucent media as opposed to opaque, it's the effect of the underlying colors is even more apparent. So I just want to make sure I have a nice bright teal underneath there. You can barely see the teal in the reflection. Ooh, there's some down here too. But when I put a darker color on top of that, I'm really going to want that teal to show its true colors, as one might say. Okay, this is starting to... Ooh, no, not yet. Let's go back to this spot right here and add another layer in. First thing I'm going to do is add onto this really, really warm red area. Kind of chill hop jazz. I'm using a station, the chill hop station right now, to provide background music, and a lot of the time it's great. I think it's convenient. I love it. Very chill, as promised. But sometimes it's just this kind of like noodly jazz stuff, and I cannot get with it. So if you're also hating this experience with music, I'm sorry. It'll be over soon. starting to get into the territory of painting some of the reflection on the mug. And I can tell you from experience that painting reflection can get really weird really quickly. It's very easy to paint over something that you weren't supposed to paint over. You kind of have to fight your brain's instinctual interpretation of the scene. So I'm moving on to the shadow here at the tip, this part of the shape. No, I'm actually not gonna do that. I want to be able to paint all of this area, and this is too damp for that. So leave this alone for now. We'll come back to it. And this is now dry. So I can paint this cup. I tend to like to paint similar objects at around the same time, so I can try to use the same techniques. Emphasis on try there. Let's see how that works. So let's put a base layer down on Mug Secundo over here, which is going to be quite warm yellow. Oops, I think I meant to leave some of that white. Oops. I'm not too worried about the colors that are happening right here, because it's going to get much, much darker. same red that I used over on this, what do you call these? Coaster thing. To show the illumination that's kind of coming, there's a little bit of a glow coming from inside the tea. Actually, let's try that with a different red. That's a little better. One of the weird things about watercolor is that with like something like acrylic, if you want more intense color, you add more paint. And often what you have to do if you want an intense color, watercolor, is you have to not have painted anything else there. You have to be starting with a very pure canvas. So I won't be able to get I don't need a bright red in there, but I wouldn't be able to get a bright red in there because it wasn't meant to be. I'd already painted other colors over it. Okay, so we let that sit for now. Pick up a little bit of the color here. I don't want this to exist. There are 3 ways to correct a mistake in watercolor. One of them is to scrub at an area with your brush, kind of pick up some of that pigment. The other one is if you catch it in time, you can often blot whatever it is that you put in by accident. And the third way to correct a mistake, which is the most effective one in my opinion, is give up. Just accept it. This is your reality now. This is what you have to live with. 100% success rate. This is dry here, so I'm going to go ahead and mix in some of this red. Very little itty bitty bit of red that's adding what I think is a very nice contrast here. Just like that. Also lifting a little bit of pigment here, because I want a clearer canvas to drop some of that red down on. Otherwise it won't show up as red, it'll just be purple. I was not made to sit like this for so long. I don't know why I do it. Okay, leaving that alone for now. Gotta wait for that to dry. So I'm gonna come back to the shadows here. And I think I'm gonna use the same shade as I used for the shadow here. And that'll help the shadow feel contiguous rather than out of place. I think I'm just gonna kind of like make shapes in here and let the brush do the work for me. Using the back of the brush to drag some pigment in where I don't quite have enough fine control at the edge of the brush. want to get over precise with this shadow. I want it to be interesting, but not to like catch all of the attention in the painting. Now, one thing I don't like with what's going on right now is that this shadow is much greener compared to the blues in here, and it's just because it's over an area with more yellow pigment. So I'm gonna up the blue just a little bit to try and compensate for that. I have to leave it alone. Let's let that go. I think I'm probably gonna do a wash over it once it's dry to help kind of blend out those sharp edges just a little bit. It doesn't need to be quite so sharp. But we gotta let it dry first. So. Painting through shadows through glass is so weird. Doing something that may not be advisable. It's happening anyway. Chill hop has gone back to being chill. Thank God. So I'm going to take the frisket off on this area. I don't need it anymore, and I want to start refining some of these light areas. I think that's all I had on there. And I'll come in there with a really, really fine brush to get some of those very dark lines in. That's going to help things to pop. Let's do that now. Would anyone mind if I zoomed in more to the painting and less to the paint mixing? Just speak now, sometime in the next minute or so, or I guess you don't have to forever hold your piece, but hold it for a while. This is a particularly tough phase for me right now because I want to do all of the detail, and I really can't let myself get pulled into trying to paint all of the detail. I just need to get kind of nail the obvious stuff, nail the important details, and then quit fussing with it. And that is not my forte. Okay, no one has mentioned that they do not want this to be zoomed in, so I'm going to take that as tacit permission to change the view here again. A bit more zoomed in. Using a very dark shade and a very fine brush, put in some of those fine details in. Trying to remind myself that it doesn't have to be a perfect mug, it just has to like vaguely look like it could be a mug. My perfectionist side is screaming at me. Okay. So hopefully it's obvious how adding those details on the top have made the rest of this pop out a little bit. Yes, hey, Clean Cut Paulette, I'm gonna have to redirect you to my PR person. That's gonna be Gangle19. They take care of all of my PR business. Thank you very much. I think this might be my first bot. That's so exciting. Wow. I feel very special. Okay, my name is Tess Myers and I'm getting caught up in details. I have to stop and go think about something else for a while. So, let's go back to another area. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this one. That's gonna be great. Maybe. I feel really weird about this mug. Whatever. Can't feel weird about anything if I feel weird about everything all the time. Checkmate. I'm mixing a dark color. I'm not entirely sure what's going into it right now. Sometimes I just pick a well that has dark color in it already, and then I just start adding more pigment until it gets balanced to be the warmth that I need it to be. Is this a good idea? I don't know. Does it work? Usually. Good enough for me. It's gonna be so hard to rewatch some of these videos in like 2 years when I've learned more things and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. That was so dumb. just absolute cringe-inducing. I look forward to it. Hello, future me. Suck it. Right, yeah, and then hopefully I'll also be like, ah, yes, and see how far I've come. Now I'm a billionaire artist lounging on my, I don't know, like, what do billionaire artists have? Family of rare white tigers or something? Sounds environmentally unstable. I'm still trying to figure out which Matt you are. Are you the Matt that was my HA at Reed? Are you the Matt that I know from dance? How many other Matts do I know? I think a bunch. Is it a mystery? Okay, this is not the color I want it to be. Yes, satin chase lounge with tiger fur detailing. Absolutely. Get me one. They have those at IKEA, right? Great. This seems accurate, more or less. Let's do a lighter layer. No, I know actually, okay, hang on. I know a Seattle Matt from dance. I know the Matt that moved here recently. With long hair. I know, oh god, I'm sure I know other Matts too. I'm gonna feel really shitty. If I'm not able to pull the right Matt up. I'm sorry, I'm using my brain for other things right now. Oh, it's Seattle Matt. Okay. Whew. Wow, finally got the right Matt. Hello, welcome. Unless you're like a different Matt from Seattle, and I actually know a whole bunch of Matts from Seattle. Hard to say. Oh, this is gonna get weird. Okay. Hold on to your butts. Is it Jake or Jack? I would guess Jack, I guess, but it's kind of hard to tell what people's names are based on their handles. Happy to use your handle, absolutely. I usually assume if someone introduces themselves with their IRL name, they don't mind me using it, but I will absolutely call you Jack/Jake, if that makes more sense. When I started this painting, I was honestly like, oh, this won't take me too long. This is like it's a simple, straightforward still life. Shh. I should know better at this point, I think. Literally, how obsessed can I get with this detail? Go. This bad boy alone. Or like I will soon. Maybe. Nice, nice. Thank you, Gangle. I always appreciate the passing on. I assume that's Siobhan of I feel like I'm getting a like fine art critique. Thank you. Okay, leaving that alone. It has to dry. I'm going to address this now. And how will I do that? I don't know. I'm gonna paint it. Bluish, yellowish. With all this stuff back here, none of it is like standing out too much. So I have to be careful to stay in the right color family. Whenever I add a new color, it's gonna kind of pop things out a little bit. If it's a contrasting color, so I need to be. I mean, this is the thing about painting. You have to get the right color also in the right place. It's absolutely maddening. Don't know why I do this. I'm gonna try something. The reflection here is on the actual teapot is kind of spotty because the teapot has a texture on it. I'm gonna ignore the texture and just kind of go with the reflection and see if that gets me the effect that I want. Find out, won't we? Jack/Matt, thank you for coming along. I appreciate you stopping by. See you next time, or whenever. What are the... Gangle, what are those things that you have sent me? Are they moons? Are they eyeballs? Are they tortillas? Is this a request for tortillas? You're too far away. Cannot deliver. That was fine. This looks like about the right shade to not disagree with the surrounding colors too much. Let's hope so anyway. It's gonna look really choppy at first. I have some frisket down, and then I'll lift the frisket up and get a little bit more precise about those lines. Probably gonna have to get in here with a little bit of white ink at the ends to really clean up some of these lines. Oh! Whomst! Somebody with hiragana characters. I don't know how to pronounce those. That was... Eh? I'm not sure. Anyway, welcome. Thank you for the follow. Always a request for tortillas, Gangle says, but they're salutes. Okay, so I think maybe my computer's not rendering those correctly. I feel like I would expect a very slightly different form for salutes. Anyway, you're getting tortillas. I've mailed them already. It's too late. I've lost a brush. Here we go. Let's leave this guy alone for now. Come back to that later. And I'm gonna... What am I gonna do? I'm gonna go back to my little friend, the tea strainer. Back here. Oh, hey Tian, welcome back. Thanks for joining. Are you streaming today, Tian? I have a mod today. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. I think I got my first bot like maybe 20 minutes ago. So like that's a what do you call it? That's a landmark for me. Very exciting. I feel like I've truly made it. Oh, you were going to stream, but decided against it. Yeah, understandable. Very understandable. Well, I hope you have a good time just hanging out. Other than being a mod, which you don't have to do anything for. You have no job. No work to do here. Just relax. Have a nice time. Good. I think that's a good life goal to have, or whatever. Ability. Just always have a nice time. Okay. That T-strainer is getting weirder and weirder, and then suddenly, once I take the frisket off and add some extra lines, it's gonna hopefully actually look like a T-strainer. You all, we're in the awkward adolescent phase of watercolor right now. So thank you everyone who's stuck around. And also thank you to anyone who just dropped by. Also cool. Okay. I'm gonna leave this one where it is. That's drying. That's drying. Ooh, I don't have a lot of options. Let's put some red down here. This is kind of my underpainting layer here. I'm gonna put some stuff on top of it later to tone this down. One of the things I really liked about this scene when I took a picture of it, I was having tea at a friend's house, was the bright splotches of red coaster. This friend, it's been like 2 years, she's been trying to get me to use coasters when I'm at her house, because she like actually cares about her furniture. Totally reasonable. And it's really only been in the last, like, I don't know, a few months that I've actually figured out how to use a goddamn coaster. So here it is, celebrating the coasters. I don't care about my furniture, so I never use them at home. Prefer a roller coaster, really. What did I just put down? Oh, yeah, no, I understand. The theory of using coasters is incredibly simple. I'm just very stupid. And I'm used to doing things a certain way. I know. Listen. Just because you're my mod doesn't mean you can roast me for not being able to use a coaster. Are you being... Would it be like... I guess it would be coasting me, not roasting me, if it's a coaster? No. That might not fly. Anyway, I'm sorry to hear about your Cintiq. Was it a Cintiq 16? God, I think I have the same one. And I've really been considering selling it so I can get an iPad instead. Because I realize I don't take my Cintiq anywhere because it has so many goddamn cords. And I have to plug it into so many things, and then also the backlighting kind of sucks. And I think I can just get like a refurbished, what do you call it? iPad. There we go. Instead. So I may also be selling my Cintiq. Sorry you had to say goodbye to a friend, though. I know it's tough. I don't mind being roasted as a friend. yeah, I've used mine as a monitor too. I do use it. I use it for digital art. It's just like how often, and I really have to like kind of jazz myself up to actually use it because it's such a pain in the ass to get out. Is this right? I don't know. Maybe. Okay, I'm still waiting for some stuff to dry. I think I'm gonna pull out, no, I'm not. I'm gonna fix this line because it's been bothering the hell out of me. Yeah, I bought my secondhand, my Cintiq secondhand also, so I'm not sure I will make money off of selling it, but I don't think I'll lose out, which is nice. Hopefully, I just want to be able to pay for a refurbished iPad, I think. Oh, I don't even need the iPad Pro. I just, like, I've been using my housemate's iPad for reading textbooks, actually, so not the same thing, but I think maybe part of what's making me a little resistant to just pulling the trigger and doing it is that I'm going to have to learn how to use Procreate instead of Krita, which is the program I learned how to use. And I made this choice like 2 years ago when I bought the Cintiq, which was, do I buy a Cintiq and learn how to use Krita, or do I get a iPad and learn how to use Procreate? And I made the wrong choice, as often happens. Yeah, Krita's honestly, I like Krita now that I have learned how to use it, but it's honestly very difficult and it's buggy, and I have to set I have autosave set up for every 30 seconds because it just crashes. I've lost enough work that I just have like autosave files all over the place. Not great. Clip Studio. Gangle, are you using Clip Studio instead of Procreate now, or do you use that like alongside? I think I'll just go back in time and punch myself a little bit. I think that'll be good. Oops. Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm always the one being like, no, true mastery means you failed a dozen times. Or like, actually 10,000 times. So yeah, you're right, you're right. Can't argue that. I just hate it. You know who likes to make mistakes? Perverts, probably. Some weird people out there has got some kink for making mistakes. I'm sure it exists. Why can't that be me? Alrighty. What's dry? You dry. Awesome. Taking the frisket off of here. And then I'm gonna make fix some things up, hopefully. Thank you, Tian. I appreciate that. I was just wondering, like, is this boring? I find it fascinating. I love to sit around and just like, you know, prod little bits of pigment from one area to another. But I know that not everybody's into that. I do assume that anyone who's currently on my stream is here for a reason, though. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit more shadow back here. That is a face. Gangle has put a face, a frog jar, and robot goatsy? I don't know. Oh, it's a heart. Robot hands. Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh no, we're back to the like smooth jazz chill hop. No, certainly not. Then there will be no recorded proof. Definitely not. I'll be wiping this from the archives ASAP. Okay, that's just a little bit dark. I want this, I want this shadow here to be a like different shade than this shadow up here, but it needs to be conceivably the same shadow. It needs to be a similar enough shade that the eye doesn't say, oh, that looks like a completely different shadow. Which I think we're accomplishing here. Warm that up a little bit. Is the I mean, I don't mind it being on the channel. Is there like a Twitch reason? Are they gonna like would they what are what's it called? SWAT me? Twitch, like, just come bust in, the Twitch cops. Show up and be like, someone said a bad word on your channel. We're gonna take all your painting equipment. Have fun watching Netflix for the rest of your life. It probably is a banned word. I don't know. I mean, I would test it too. If anyone wants to try saying goatee in chat, see if it works. I'd be solving a very important scientific question. Giggle. The things you are called to do for God and for country. Okay, let's come together a little bit. I'm starting to see some continuation of shadow and, you know, stuff like that. I just need to keep tweaking some of these spots and remembering to take off the frisket as all these areas dry. Probably should have painted the background before I took this off. Whatever. YOLO. So I'm not gonna mess with that yet. I'm gonna paint this bad boy. I know I said I was gonna do that a while ago. Wow! It worked. You didn't get auto-modded. Okay, that's amazing. The auto-mod does not know about the bad word. Love that. Love that for us. Okay, that can be like a... I don't know, a battle cry or something. Please don't. Okay, I missed something. Oh man, this is what happens when I paint instead of looking at chat. Someone want to fill me in on what just happened? 19 messages. 16 messages were deleted by a moderator. Oh my god. Was that just Gangle being... Gangle has entered the chat. And then apparently exited the chat. Gangle has been banned in chat. This is all I wanted out of my... what is it? It's a Thursday. I almost said Tuesday. Ooh. Oh, I see. So you can just time someone out. Oh, wow, amazing. Oh, no. It's true. Gangle just keeps coming back. They really grow on you. Okay, so I'm adding some really dark color in here, and I'm gonna plop in a bit of purpley biz too. Really try to get this sufficiently dark. What's up for that? And now here I'm taking advantage of this like kind of pigment pushing effect of the quinacridone red, because as I add it in, it's just gonna like kind of shove around some of the pigment that's already there. I'm gonna leave it like that, see what happens. I'm gonna do some background stuff, I think. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna, this bit right here. Oh my god, is that Siobhan? Hi, welcome! Now I can get my fancy art critique from you in person, or, I mean, like kind of in person. In person-ish. Okay. Let's do this stuff down here. This value is like really close to this value, so I'm gonna remember that. Or will I? Who knows if I will ever remember anything. I'm gonna start by putting down some quinacridone gold mixed with a bit of... I don't know what this is. I think it's quinacridone rust. Because I want a yellowish, really warm... Oops, I painted over that. That's fine. Warm yellowish base. Pretty much the number one thing I pay attention to when I paint in watercolor is what the gradient is. So like over here, there's this like pretty warm gold edge, and it gets cooler off here around the middle, and so that's what I'm really going to try to nail here. Oh, if I can find my paint. Hey! Siobhan, sister wife! Love that. Love that for us. Okay, so I'm gonna put some warm stuff in here. A little bit of like red, maybe? IDK. Some over here too. And then... Actually, I'm gonna let that layer dry before I go in with another layer. Okay, what can we do? I want to put a background in. I know I keep saying that and I don't do it. No one believes me at this point. For the background, I do not really want to add any detail. It doesn't add anything to the picture. There's maybe some like vague suggestion of stuff, but mostly I just want it to be kind of darker. I don't know, let's find out. I'm gonna use a different brush though. Oh my god. Well, I'm not going to use a different brush because I don't know where my flat brushes. Oh, fuck. Where did it go? That's so weird. It's probably like hanging out down here with the dust bunnies. Ugh. I should rename this channel Watch Me Lose Stuff and then look for it fruitlessly. Oh, it's right here, literally right here, staring at me in the face. Oh my god. Hey, Funkadella Chili, I almost got it. Welcome, thank you for the follow. Funkadella Chilikalika. I'll try again next time. wish I was the kind of painter who could just like casually paint a background in a few strokes. I know this happens. I know this exists somewhere. And just like confidently leave areas unpainted. But I was not made that way. I'm too anxious. My camera is too low over this area, so I have to like flip the edge of my brush around so I don't get it caught. Oops, I painted over the lines. That's fine. Okay. It's going in a direction. It's starting to look like a still life now, huh? Alright, let's put in some of this biz. Like, I like the books behind it, and I just don't care about the books behind it, so I'm not going to bother to paint them. Thank you, Gangle. You know what? I feel like that got kind of close to, like, putting down a background in a few strokes. Of course, now I have the overwhelming urge to fuss with it. This is what happens. I do my few strokes. I'm like, oh, yes, perfect. Time to fuck it up. Time to just absolutely ruin it. Close. I want to get like a little hint of some of the horizontal lines that are going on in here. I think they add something interesting. I don't want to go too far. Perhaps I have gone too far. We'll see. All right. Oops. That was fine. That was not to dry it, that was just to kind of blow some of the pigment around. It's an advanced professional technique. Alright, back to this area. Now that this is not really dry, as you can tell by the fact that I just stuck my finger in wet paint. Just kidding, on to another area. Absolutely F the books. Okay. I keep saying I'm gonna take the frisket off here, and then I don't. Hopefully this area is dry enough for me to get in here. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, what I want to do is take a quick break and make myself a drink. Oh, no. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Please enjoy absolutely nothing. Please enjoy this. Please enjoy watching paint dry. Literally. And the paint's not even dry yet. Amazing. Cool, cool. Okay. I like this. I think adding to the dark sort of areas has helped to pop out the light in the scene a little bit more. Okay. I'm hoping to wrap this up by like 5:20 or something. Oh, hey, I missed you. Oh, now I get a second try on your name. Funkadela Chica. There we go. Welcome, Funkadela Chica. Thank you for the follow. Thanks for joining in. Sorry if you joined in just before that quick break. We're back now. Okay. So I'm hoping to wrap up sometime in the next, like, oh god, half hour. Because I have to do the paperwork to register my car, like, today. So let's clean this up a little bit. Let's first put my brushes away so that I don't lose them. I know you guys love watching me lose stuff on camera, but... No, I lied. I'm gonna be putting a little more color down here. So, let's do... I can just put a little bit of detail along the bottom of this guy, I think it's gonna start bringing some of that, like the shape of it into sharper focus. Right now it's still pretty blurry. Put my hand into wet paint. But first, I gotta put some red down here and then leave it alone. Into my friend Capsecundo. It's sticky. Oh god. Okay, cool. I just got some paint all over myself. Check this out. Can go with my already present bruises. Sometimes I can't tell if what's on my arms is a bruise or if it's just paint. This one, a little bit of Payne's gray. This one, painful gray. Shellhop channel is fired. I'm gonna put on some different Shellhop channel if I can find it. Terrible. How do I do this? Wow, I hate that. Sorry. can hear the conversation going on in the top of my house. Painting glass is hard. Did you guys know? Absolutely terrible. I don't know why I decided to do this. Alone. I'm coming back to this spot at the bottom of the main teapot. More or less what I was hoping for here. I'm just not going to get to anything about this teapot. I'm gonna try to keep it loose and expressive. Partially because it's not important detail, and also partially because I'm running the fuck out of time. a little bit of reflected red here that I'm trying to capture. See, that's why you don't paint one wet area next to a wet area. That's why you have to wait for it to dry. Oops. What color do I even have on my brush? Dark. reinforcing some of the reds in here because the scattering of red really is an important it's going to bring everything together in a way, and without it there's no cohesion in the scene. So I want that red to look actually red. That's the hope. Okay. I'm like pretty upset with this teapot. This teapot is not my friend right now. Something I've been finding to be true sometimes. When I feel like something looks weird or like it looks like generally look messy to me, I found that sometimes it's because of like a false sense of detail. So it means I've put a lot of detail in, but the detail's not correct. Whereas sometimes you can have like very loose approximations of where something is of representation, and then it looks just right. And I found that there's a balance between like it's kind of like false specificity of data, if anyone's familiar with this idea, where if you give your data point to like the hundredth or whatever, but your data isn't actually that precise, it gives a false sense of how precise your data actually is. And so kind of the same idea here is if I offer a whole lot of information and detail, but the detail is kind of off, the brain says, no, I'm calling sus on that. That doesn't seem right. Whereas if you don't offer that much detail, or you offer very loose detail, the brain's like, yeah, that doesn't seem to be in the right place, but I don't really care. That's totally fine. And so I've been trying to, like, when I see something that just like it feels like it's messy or it feels like the detail's kind of off, I've been trying to actually loosen it up by adding less detail or kind of like fuzzing with the detail a little bit. And I found that can really help, because then your brain isn't trying to make sense of a scene with high expectations for how much detail there should be, if that makes any sense. The detail, if the brain doesn't expect much detail and it doesn't get much detail, it'll fill in the blanks. It does a great job of that. The brain is expecting a lot of detail and have that detail be accurate, it's going to be really picky about what it sees. That's my theory anyway. Goodbye, brush. I didn't need you anyway. Okay, so I need this part of the background to be darker. Moody's good, but darker Moody. Okay. I think that's closer to the value I'm looking for. Hey, Jerisi. I'll go with J. Welcome to the chat. And thank you. And yes, these are watercolors. Definitely gonna have to clean up the rim here a bit with some white ink. Same up here, but that's okay. That's what we came here to do. to clean up our mistakes. Why do I keep getting paint on my arm? Terrible. That's a great question, Gangle. Do you enjoy painting reflective things and reflections? What's the definition of enjoy here? Do I do it? Does it cause me deep, maddening pain? Yes, absolutely. Do I keep doing it? Yes, absolutely. I will not stop. Yes, I enjoy it. I think it's very interesting and, like a mystery to be solved. It's just often kind of, it's difficult, it's frustrating, and also, therefore, satisfying. I've mostly, I actually haven't painted a lot of reflections. I've mostly, used charcoal for stuff like that, which is kind of a different experience. You don't have to worry so much about the colors. But I think I'm enjoying, despite all my complaining, I think I'm enjoying the process of actually painting this. I'm not sure I got these lines right. Okay, so I'm looking at this piece and I'm trying to balance some of the colors overall, and what I'm seeing is that this background shadow actually isn't dark enough now. This is often what happens when I start to add background in, is the darks in the background blow out the darks in the foreground, and I have to paint them in again. So usually when I'm painting, I try to anticipate that, and I go darker than I think I'll need, but very occasionally that backfires, so there's no winning, really. I'm just going to do a second layer over this. Actually, that's already getting pretty close. I think it might have been mostly this edge that I needed to darken. But definitely a little bit in here. I don't know, Gangle, have you done much with like reflections and reflective things? Have you ever tried to paint white, something that's white, before? That's really fun. I feel like this shadow has a much stronger presence in the painting now. And now, of course, the teapot is too light, so... Actually, once that's dry, I'm going to do another layer over the whole teapot, I think. I might even actually... It's a little heavy-handed, I think, but sometimes the hand of judgment is a heavy one. Underwater digital painting. Ooh, that would be cool. Yes. Armor, definitely pertinent, dangerous. Dude, I have to do some more, like... When was the last time I did fantasy illustration? Ages ago. I miss it. I'm gonna take a leaf out of your book and paint some D&D shit or something. Okay, so what I'm hoping for in this teapot is to have it look kind of like it is part of the shadow, which it is, sort of, kind of. I'm thinking about the shapes that are in this painting, kind of rather than the details right now, which is really how I should have started, but I never start that way because I'm stupid. On my end, and it's not dry yet. I gonna need to wrap up soon-ish. So, oh man, I totally didn't see that. I kinked this line back here. Love that. I was like, why does the back line look so sloppy? What could have caused that? IDK, maybe a sloppy line. Alright. The last piece of, like, not the last piece, but one of the last pieces of detail that I haven't even touched on is this little coaster back here. And I think it really just needs to be, like, barely hinted at. Not just because I don't have any more time, but also because it's a simple shape. I guess contouring to these red coasters back here. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. I should do a watercolor fantasy painting stream. Good time to exercise old and completely abandoned skills. Not sure that really adds anything. Why don't do that? Eh. Wow, this is a great exercise in stop fussing. Okay, what else does this need? Well, I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that we're approaching a done-ish point. There's a lot of little cleanup areas that I'm really itching to get to. Like around here, and I think like adding in some white ink at the end is gonna help to kind of bring everything together. But this is the basic idea of a multi-piece still life. I think there's probably some things that I might add a wash in here because I feel like this needs to be a little bit warmer. Can't do that because this is still a little bit wet. And then I think if I can kind of tie some of the details together just a little bit more, it's gonna like pop, or it might not. We'll see. But I'm gonna call it here for now, and thank you everyone for coming. I'm gonna take a look at who else is streaming right now to see if we can kick off a raid. If anyone has any suggestions, feel free to make them. Okay, we've got some digital painting channels. Let's see if we have any. Ooh, that's a butt. That's definitely a butt. Ooh, Anime Nouveau Zelda. That looks kind of cool. Oh, yeah. Let me check out Julie. Oh, cute. What is this? I have my sound turned off, so I don't know what it is. This is some kind of, it looks like watercolor animation biz. Listen, I have no idea what this is. Let's go. Okay. I'm gonna set up a raid. Full animation world. I don't even know what that is. Well, I don't know why I can't paste into chat, but I'm upset about it. Okay, well, let's hope I spelled that right. How do I set a raid message? I don't know what that is. Is that like, it's definitely not gonna be Goatsy, I'll tell you that. We can just, do we need a raid message? Can we skip it this time? I'll think of one for next time. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the trigger on this. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna be streaming again. Oh yeah, forgot about that. I'm gonna be streaming again on it's Thursday today, on Sunday at 1 p.m. and again on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. So come hang out. Yes, test rate, very good. So I'll put that in the chat. Sunday, 1 p.m. PST. And Wednesday. How do you spell Wednesday? Oops. Oh well.